So I'm
Oh,
excited to be catching up with a band that have just released a new album. Master System has got me thinking all about kind of like my early days on gaming systems. Is that where it came from, Alex, or is there more to it than that?
no, it definitely was like an early inspiration into it. When we started making the project, well, to be fair, before it was a project, when we were just making songs, and then they kind of sort of had this like theme, this gaming theme, and like virtual reality and all of that. And then that kind of eventually tumbled itself into becoming the sort of concept that is around the album now. But that's where a lot of it came from. Like initially, we thought it would be cool to try and create our own little world, like that people could be in. That it was, it was. We wanted it to be like like sonically like a safe place for everybody to be. People go online, they have a gamer tag, nobody knows who they are, and they can express themselves on there. They can be as much of a so and so as they like, or they can be lovely, or that. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like that kind of anonymity means that people can kind of be themselves there, and there's no judgment, there's no stress. So we kind of like started going down that route. That was the very early stages of making this project, and we were like, oh yeah, it's kind of like each track is like putting on, virtual reality goggles, and each door you'd walk into would be a different track, and it kind of escalated from there. The idea of having this sort of like weird gamer kid who doesn't talk to anybody but goes into this world and he becomes his own thing, which then somebody pointed out to me and was like, that's basically a film called Player One or something like that. Well, like pretty much the whole concept behind what we were doing, basically someone said that's that film, and I was like, right, okay, well we need to think a little bit harder because someone's already done this clearly. um but yeah, it started with that and then led into a bit more of a, what's the word, I don't know, it just became a little bit less about the kind of gaming side of things and more to do with kind of reality and looking at the reality that we live in and what we're presented with and how we interact with it and how plugged in we all are and how AI is taken over everywhere. And at some point, would that become sentient? What would that look like? What does that mean? Where does that leave us? Like we all had a bit of a like. A lot of it has come from obviously from us, but Scribbler, who made the artwork, we had a lot of bouncing back and forth with him, and he sort of really honed in on that and brought that to life. And yeah, and obviously it's reflected in the artwork. But that is kind of like where we were going. It's building a world within the world that we're in, where you can kind of try and take a look at things from a different perspective. Do you know what I mean? That whole, you're hanging digital art in your digital art gallery in a digital world, and there's a beautiful world outside there to look at. So it was just trying to shed a sort of a bit of light on kind of maybe how we need to remove ourselves a little bit from that virtual world as such.
Yeah, sometimes we can get a bit too intensely kind of enveloped in the kind of online world. But I really did like how you kind of summed it up at the end of Widow, in a world which is obviously the opening track on the album, in a world where you can be anyone, who will you become? Because that's it. That it's almost like the online world gives you the facility to be anything you want in some ways.
Mm. Which is beautiful and dangerous all at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, and Ready Player One definitely does investigate that. It's a great film. If you've not seen it, and you love the sound of what Monster Florence are doing, then definitely go and check it out. So the last, like, we've had a number of singles, like have trickled through from the record. Before that, you did an EP back in what, 2020? Did you feel like Cowboy's an idiot, right? Just
Yeah, that's it.
bloody
Cowboys
wrong.
idiots. Yeah.
So did lockdown and stuff mess things up for you? Because obviously you're not a small outfit, are you? There's an extended lineup.
Yeah, massively. So we had a really good 2019. We'd had a good few years leading up to that, and then that year was really good. We'd done a massive string of gigs, and we'd headlined the BBC Introducing Stage at Glastonbury, and we had a lot of really good momentum building up. And then we got to sort of 2020. We signed our deal with Project Melody and was like, right, cool, we're good to go. Like all systems like are in full swing. And then literally, I think we signed the deal on February, and then obviously COVID came like March or whatever it was. which just absolutely pulled the rug under everything. Like with us being a six-piece band, as like people could listen to the record and not necessarily take on board that it's a live band. Do you know what I mean? I think it's something that gets a little bit lost sometimes when people do write-ups and stuff. People aren't quite sure what to call us. Are we a hip hop group or a collective, or but like it is a live band, and I think us playing live is where we really shine. Do you know what I mean? I think people that come to see us live are a bit like, whoa, this is way bigger and more in your face than they were expecting. So for us to not be able to play live, as it does for all artists, it has a major impact. But it did allow us to go away and kind of work on Cowboys and Idiots and be locked away without having to feel too guilty that we were being a bit self-indulgent with it. Do you know what I mean? But you know, out the back of that, we ended up with an EP that has got some good songs on there, and it, you know, again, it sort of breathed its own lot of life and went off on its own. But yeah, it did definitely have an impact, but it also created something nice out of it. So I can't complain. Do you know what I mean? Cowboys and Idiots is cool. So I've got no issues. It's just slowed us down a little bit, slightly.
So what influences did you kind of come together in the beginning to make music together over?
So I mean, so you've got us three frontmen. So you've got me, Dream, and Wallace. So us three have all been friends since we were young kids, and have always done music together. Like we come up as teenagers. I was like 14 with my little portal studio, and we'd all be around mine every weekend recording songs, and we kind of came up making rap tunes and through the grime scene and stuff like that. And then I met Tom, who owns the studio that we work from. He'd been messaging me asking me to go down there because he was local, and then sort of got down there. I recorded a solo-y mixtape there, and then after that, he was like, "Look, I don't know what's going on with you, but I feel like something good will happen with whatever journey you're going on. So you can record here, just take me on the journey with you, essentially." And was just like, "Let's keep working together." So I was like, "All right." I was like, "Well, to be fair," and I'd taken Dream and Wallace with me to a couple of them sessions, so we knew everybody knew each other. And then I was like, "Look, I've always wanted to have a band around me, and I think it'd be sick to do that. So like, can you make that happen?" And he was like, "Cool." And we ended up with a day in studio where there was about 40 odd musicians that came in, and it was almost like a live audition. Like all day, everybody was there, and we were jamming stuff and doing things, and people was eventually leaving until it ended up whittling down, and it was just me, me, Dream, and Wallace, and then you had Tom, Cam, and Johnny left, and we were like, okay, well, this looks like this is our band then. Do you know what I mean? And so it weren't like it was an influence of sounds that kind of brought us in, but the beauty of it was you had six people from very different backgrounds. Them three knew each other, and obviously us three knew each other very well. We were all like best friends, but like everybody's got their own taste in things. You know what I mean? Like, and I've grew up listening from everything from sort of like punk and indie and different bands and stuff, all the way through to garage and grime and all the rest of it. And then the other guys have sort of come from the other end of the spectrum. So, and I think you can hear that. You only have to go and put on the first Monster Florence EP. Like, I mean, don't put that on before you listen to Master System, because Master System is much better. But you listen to that first EP and you can hear it. It's like a tornado of sound. You've got jazz, punk, rap, hip hop, all the elements of what people sort of note that we have in us now, but you can just see that it's chaotic. It's like someone has chucked them all into like a jar and is shaking them up, and nobody quite knows how to go with it or what to do with it. But it over time it's kind of come together. But yeah, I think everybody's individual influences from all over the place. I mean, like I can't really speak on behalf of the other lot that I know that they grew up listening to a lot of bands and stuff, but I think our influences, like the rap lot, coming in from that real UK grime scene sort of thing, but being able to kind of implement that onto instruments for us was like really exciting. Do you know what I mean? And it felt really fresh. Funnily enough, now everybody's sort of caught up and is doing that. But when we started doing it in 2015, it was like, no one else is doing this. Why not? This sounds really sick. That was just as like grime and everything had started popping again. Skepta had released like his album, and it was all starting to revive itself. So But yeah, there's an amalgamation of lots of different things. Like Johnny's come from playing his sax and is very jazzy. Cam and Tom are a lot more sort of band driven, but I've always listened to hip hop. And then you've got us three that are like hip hop and grime heads. So it was a real amalgamation of things all coming together.
You can definitely hear that. I would not like to kind of genre pigeonhole you in any way, but obviously your sound has become more refined over the years that
Yeah,
you've been pulling it together.
yeah.
It's great that you obviously had that studio space that you could come together and kind of meld things over. But have you found the kind of local scene there helpful or supportive at all, or have you found like you've had to step out or look to further kind of venues and spaces to kind of get that support?
I think there's been elements of it. I don't want to. I'm not going to sit and start bad mouthing Colchester's music scene because I still live here, so I might end up with people outside my door. But it's not. It's a funny scene around here. Like it's quite. I don't know, like quite clicky. It's very band driven. I think a lot of people didn't quite know how to take it at first. We've done a couple of gigs in a few local places, and even just down to like the sound guy being like, how do I mix people like this? Like the vocals are too quiet. You need to do rap vocals on top of band music. So, but I mean, there has been support here, and it has served itself for what it was. We've done a lot of local gigs and stuff like that, and done some stuff sort of closer to home, like around Ipswich and stuff like that. But if I'm honest, like it's London is kind of, it feels more like home. When we play at London, it's like people show up. Do you know what I mean? The last gig we did in London in December at the Lexington, like we sold out that show within a matter of days. Like the merch was sold out before we'd hit the stage, and we hit the stage, and that whole crowd knew every single word of every tune. And like when we play here, it's a little bit different to that. It's funny, like we don't have as much of a homegrown sort of support, but obviously people around here do, and people rate it. But I think it's a slightly different demographic. I think the music scene around our way is a lot more centered around traditional bands as opposed to a kind of whatever you want to call us, some sort of hybrid of all of it. Do you know what I mean? So we've very much had to lean on kind of London and the scene there. And we've got a lot of connections there, we know a lot of people there. We spend a lot of time there. Half the band live there. So it kind of made sense. And also I feel like not to knock anybody working within their own local scene, but I just think you got to kind of always be pursuing something a bit bigger and further than that. Otherwise, it's so easy. There are bands around here that have been the bands around here, but they've been in it for 15 years, and you end up stuck in that circuit. And it was always us trying to make sure that we kind of didn't happen, but we didn't have much of an option, so we ended up in London anyway, and sort of went from there. And now it's growing, and now like if we put out something on our Instagram onto our story or whatever, and just say, oh, we're going to play some gigs, where does everybody want us to come? It's all over the UK. We get people from all over the place. We have tons of support from Australia. People are constantly begging us to go out there, which would be lovely if it wasn't on the other side of the world. But there's support all over the place. And if I'm honest, there's probably more support in other places than where we're from. But like I say, I think a lot of that is due to the demographic of the type of bands that do well around here. We don't quite fit into that mold so well.
Are you hyped about getting back out there again and being able to
Oh,
take the new album on the road?
it's the most exciting part of music. I love making music. I love being in studio. I love the creative process. I love all of that. But like playing live, and I'm sure most people that make music feel the same. I think it'd be mental not to. Like it's what you do it for. You go out there and you play, and people are singing the tunes back. Like I say, the Lexington one, I had a few moments at that gig where I was like I had one. We started playing Deck of Cards, which is probably our most, well, it is our by far most popular song. And like we come out, we'd done the gig, and I was gassed and jumping about and hype. And then we started playing that, and the whole crowd started singing it back at us. And I was like, I need to turn around because I'm having a bit of an emotional moment. I was like, whoa, like this is mad. Like it was the first time where it felt like things had really stepped up in terms of the level of support that was there. The people were really there for us, and really like we've not kind of crossed over into like having like a mass, like the fan base is wide, but it's like pockets of it. But the people that listen to us really listen to us. Do you know what I mean? And so when you get to a gig and you're face to face with those people, you can feel it. Do you know what I mean? Like the energy in the room is on 10. and that's literally all you do this for. Do you know what I mean? You come out and it's like, it's not like, accolades are great and all of that stuff is great, and being like in a cool band, yeah, sick, cool. But when you've been locked away in a room for months making songs that are from wherever in your own personal life of sorts, then you go out and it's resonating with people and you can feel it, and people are jumping about and going nuts, and you got people living, like, for a minute you're just, everyone in that room doesn't care what's going on at home, doesn't care what's going on at work, doesn't care what's going on outside of these walls. But right now, in here, me, you, everyone here, we are in this together, so we can just have it off. And it's the like, it's exciting. It's the most alive I ever feel. So getting out and being able to take this album, like, is yeah. Like the last gig we played, we had a few of the tunes off the album on there, but I'm excited to go out and play them, especially because they're fresh songs. When we play a lot of songs that we played in older sets, so, and it's interesting when you take new stuff out to get a gauge of what people, you know, people clearly don't care about that one. It shocked us at the last gig at the Lexington. Like, everybody knew all the words to all of the new songs, and I was like, "Wow, these tunes have only been out. Like, Midnight Club had only been out for a few weeks, and everyone's there singing the whole chorus back." And I was just like, "Wow, this is nuts." But like, so yeah, to take it out and kind of get a feel for what people are vibing to on the album, and I think because the album as well in itself is a journey, it's not like you're on 10 the whole time. It really has its ups and downs. And I think it would be exciting to do that, to just have a bit more of a dynamic of, our gigs are renowned for being quite high energy. We come out and sort of kick your face in for an hour and then go back off. Do you know what I mean? It's full on. So it would be nice to kind of do some of the more down tunes on here. Like, as I say this now, but like, for me to be able to come out and do Did the Birds Still Sing at Hell, Did the Birds Still Sing in Hell, like the last tune on the album, just sung and very sort of, there's nothing like jumping around and all the rest of it. I say I'd enjoy this now until I'm like half an hour into a gig and my voice is going, and then I've got to sing that tune. I might feel differently. But yeah, it would be nice to take some of these songs out, road test them, see what gauge we get, and know where we're going right and where we're going wrong.
You've taken the words right out of my mouth. I was going to ask you which tunes you were really looking forward to being able to kind of showcase live, but you've already done that. So we will go back because you've had so many great collaborations. I've just been looking through your uploaded profile, and Deck of Cards was the first tune you sent our way back in September 2018. But you've had some
Wow.
brilliant collaborations as well. Most recently, John Cooper Clarke, Miles Kane as well. How does it work for you working with, collaborating with somebody else? Does it, obviously you're an extensive lineup already, does it make it that bit more exciting, or you like going into the studio and just seeing where something pans out, or is it more organized than that? Like you've got a missing part and you just know there's something that's needed in there.
I think it depends on what it. I don't think we've. The only times we ever end up working with anybody, it's almost like not like we've planned to, like John Cooper Clarke, like that whole having him on Relax came off the back of John was recording in Tom's studio anyway, and we'd met John a few times, and because obviously he's a local lad, he lives in Colchester as well. He's not local, but he lives locally. Um, so he'd started coming down, and then I was in the studio with Tom, and he said he was doing an interview for, I think it was something to do with the BBC, talking about poetry, and he was talking about, I can't remember what it was, but he was talking about something to do with poetry, and then he said the line, "Relax, nothing is under control." And I looked at Tom and I was like, whatever we do today, he can take that away and do whatever, but we're nicking that line, and we're going to ask John if we can use that line, because that sentence, I was like, instantly, I was like, there's something in that. I love, it's how he spit. Like, he has a knack of saying pretty much anything. He can say, shut the door, and it will still sound far more eloquent and poetic than I could ever make it sound. Do you know what I mean? He's got a knack for it. So like, yeah, that kind of come around from that, and it was like, okay, well, we can use this, and then the whole song was then sparked around that one sentence. Whereas like with the tunes that we've got with like Miles, like that's come off the back of, we all sort of in similar friendship groups, and he was working with a good guy that does all of our photography, James Kelly, and James had played him some of our stuff when they were on tour, and he was like, oh, these guys are great, I'd love to get in. And it was just more like small world stuff, and then he came in, and we sort of hung out and we spent the day just sort of jamming stuff with him. We ended up writing a couple of songs that were for him, and then Picture Frames, the tune that we put out with him, I don't know if we put Picture Frames out first or the other one. Uh, done that. Like
Right,
originally that
isn't
song
it?
we wrote that for him. So it was like you're gonna have this. And then when we got in, he was like, like I want to do this with you lot. So we were like, oh, okay, cool. So like I'd written that chorus and sung it and laid it down and was like, this is for you. And then he was like, nah, you lot do verses and let's make this a song for us. And I was just like, all right, cool. So then, do you know what I mean? It's like nothing's ever kind of like too sort of strategic or thought about. And I think that goes for how we just make music in general. Do you know what I mean? I hate getting into a session and someone going, okay, we need to make a tune like this for this, and this is how we're going to do it. So I think it has to be like that with artists. Whenever we have artists in or anyone that's going to be doing any sort of collaborating, it's like let's just get in, let's jam about on some of the instruments, let's talk for ages, let's just hang out. Like I don't like getting in and trying to make it feel like clinical, like right, we're gonna make some music now and let's go. It's just like it doesn't work. It feels contrived, and you can hear it in music when people do that. So it's just been more a natural kind of thing that's happened through people that are creative that we work with, um, by sort of chance of it happening, really. Do you know what I mean? But there's been other bits and bobs that we've done that we've left and not put out because we were like, oh, this ain't really that. And for that exact reason, it felt like we're doing this because you're that person and we're this person and we're trying to make music together, as opposed to like a natural coming together of creatives.
It feels like the album's been a long time coming. I mean, since we had Relax come through the uploader and then Borstal completely floored me with its
Mm.
slightly different take and sound. And then we've obviously had Midnight Club and Spaceman now. So like it feels like you've had a really kind of cohesive plan about getting the music out there. So now it's finally out there. What can we expect? Is there going to be tour dates coming? And what else have you got planned? A busy festival season, I can well imagine.
So the idea for us is to get stuck, obviously, right back into playing live. There will be tour dates that we'll be announcing at some point very near in the future, around April time for sure. And obviously, we're in the middle of everything is right up in the air. Everything has been so focused on getting the album out, and we kind of work with different people and different live agents and stuff that things have there's things happening that I just don't want to start saying, yeah, this is what's happening in case these things don't always come together. But for us, the plan is to we are going to be out on the road as much as possible. Do you know what I mean? That's where we're at home. We're most comfortable. We will be sort of getting ourselves as much around the UK as possible. I want to try and hit up some places in Europe. We've got a lot of support in like Germany and France and places like that. We get quite a lot of good support in America, and there's talks of like LA and stuff like that. So and Australia. Australia is like our biggest supporters. If I go on like our Spotify and look at the top countries, like the top cities that listen to us, the top five is like Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth. Like they love us over there. So if we can get over there, that'd be great. It's just going to be trying to run around with this album and blare it in your face as much as physically possible. That is the plan for this year, and obviously to drop as much music as possible. Like I feel like it's very easy to kind of drop an album and be quite self-indulgent with it and go, right, okay, you've had this, now I'm going to disappear away. Whereas like I don't feel like we want to do that. I think this year the plan is like let the album have its moment. We've got like right now in the studio, we have got a playlist of about 270, 300 songs that are just unfinished or not used or unreleased, or there is so much music there. And so I've just said like between us all, we're all in agreement. Like this year, once the album's had its minute, let's just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. Mainly, obviously, to keep that momentum up. You don't want that to kind of like simmer out. But also, it's like there are songs that we had a few years ago that we held on to and didn't put out that now I probably wouldn't want to release now, but I wish we had at the time. I think in today's world, people haven't got time to sit and wait a year for you to release the new music. We live in a world that is you're scrolling, you're finding new. For every minute you're not releasing a tune, 10 other people have. So you ain't really got the luxury of time on your hands. So it's about trying to be running around with this album and playing it loudly everywhere and just drip feeding new music to everybody and things that we didn't release or didn't quite make the album. Because there's some like without blowing my own trumpet, there's some great music that didn't make this album that I would be absolutely heartbroken if it didn't see the light of day. So this year, after a couple of years of COVID, locked away, all of that, no, nothing. This year, we're just going to be right in everyone's faces as much as possible.
And before I let you go, because I know I have kept you for quite some time, we really need
Right?
to talk about the album artwork as well, because they've done an amazing job on it, haven't they? Talk us through it.
Yeah. So like the artwork, yeah, I have to admit, Scribbler has very much outdone himself with this. But there's a lot of people involved. There's a lot of moving parts to it. So this album artwork, right? So the actual garden itself, like the tree behind the Adam and Eve like droids, and all of that kind of shrubbery around them, that's all real. So there's a guy in Colchester where we're from that makes like hand makes these little models, and it's like a miniature. When it came, like the actual garden came, and it was probably, it's like about 3 foot long or something, and everything's tiny, just like miniature versions of it. And then that was there, and then I hope Scribbler doesn't mind me completely ruin the illusion of his artwork attempts. I'm probably going to get told off for telling you all, but so we had that, and then we took a picture of that garden and kind of 3D mapped it, and then I wish I knew the names of all the people involved as well. I feel bad that I'm not shouting them out, but somebody kind of like made those droids for Scrib, and then he kind of went in and edited them and did what he needed to do to get them looking proper in the detail and the rust and the reflections and all of that. And then we kind of like superimposed them in, and then Scribbler then went in and by hand like painted lots of like the scenery in the background, and kind of just added to the garden that had been made, and then it kind of all come together. Obviously, it depicts that whole. It feels like this album was about when Adam and Eve. We're basically back at that again. Do you know what I mean? We're at that moment where humanity's at a crossroads, but we kind of brought it up to date with them being droids as opposed to humans. And are we about to hit that tipping point where we've gone too far? Are we about to take a bite out of the forbidden fruit and everything goes Pete Tong? Or are we going to kind of put that down and look around and realize the fantastic and beautiful world that we have around us? Do you know what I mean? Without sounding too much like a hippie. But that's essentially like the point of it. And then obviously how Scribbler has kind of delivered that, I have to admit. I mean, he's done all of our artwork and he's always done very well on it, but it's like it's a piece of art. Do you know what I mean? Even if this wasn't my album, I would have this in a frame. Do you know what I mean? Like it looks, and that was the thing as well. When we made it, well, when I say when we made it, when they made it, it was like we saw it come through for the first time finished, and it was just like this is above and beyond. If I was walking through a record store and I saw that album, I would 100% stop to look at it. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, hats off to all of them involved in it because it is incredible, and I think it just gives a really clever sort of modern twist to a very obviously almost like a classic. It looks like an old oil painting from ages ago. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, it was a lot of time and effort. If I could show you the stages of how this artwork was looking, you could see the progression. It is incredible work. It is huge amount of talent has gone into that.